Hi, this is Mel Greer, Dr. Melvin Greer, Chief Data Scientist and Fellow at Intel. And this is the session focused on AI and the rise of the decentralized web. So we're going to have a great conversation around how AI and Web3 technologies and the metaverse are really changing the game, and how we as practitioners ought to be thinking about this Web3 technologies in the metaverse and the impact that AI will have there. So let's get right to it, and then I'll try and leave some time at the end for some questions. So we'll talk a bit about the evolution of the web. What is the distributed web? What is this thing that is rising? What are the critical implications? And what is the metaverse? And what is it that we ought to be thinking about when we think about moving from Web3 infrastructure capabilities and the AI capabilities and the application space in the metaverse? So it'll be a lively conversation and a lively chat. So let's see. So we'll talk a little bit about this evolution, and the evolution is kind of important, right? We've moved from Web 1, which was kind of like a global library where all this information was into like a single database that was full of assets, and we had it indexed, and the basic brick and mortar libraries were physically disrupted because of this Web 1.0. And honestly, my children can't imagine a time when I actually, if I wanted to know something, had to get in a car or go on a bus and go to another building and learn about it in a physical library. But that was the case with physical libraries. And now when Web 1 came on board, we had this idea of being able to get information digitally. Web 2 was about publishing, and it's really focusing in on this idea of consumption. Individuals now gain the ability to create information in this database and not have just the existing information in it. And so Facebook and Google and many other companies are monetizing this the data that's in this global database, both the existing and the new that's created by the consumers. And Web3 is now this data bank. And this is where this idea of consumption gives way to creation. And individuals have the potential to create data in a persistent data environment or digital environment and monetize their own data. And they are able to use crypto or digital currencies to get paid and have digital security mechanisms and digital ownership affected and done in this global data bank. And so this idea of moving from Web 1, which was just existing, to Web 2, which is existing anew with a consumption model, is giving way to Web 3, which is a model focused on creators. And this is really the major difference. Another way to take a look at this would be, we had from 1991 to 2004, this idea of consumers where they were in a read-only mode of all the data that was available. And that was kind of cool, right? It was amazing to be able to go into a digital database and find out all sorts of information. And it was limited for a while, and then all of a sudden students and academia and governments realized the importance of Web 1. And then we moved to Web 2, which is this idea of taking all the existing data plus all the new data that users, consumers were creating and putting it into this database. And there were some trade-offs. There's some trade-offs associated with that consumers and users had to make. And in many ways, they convenience of access to the existing and new information was more important than some of the trade-offs, the negative impacts associated with this this access. This is age of targeted advertising that we're in now, and the lack of privacy. And AI is having a very material impact in this age, Web 2 age. And the reason is because AI really would not have existed if we didn't have the cloud capabilities where all this data that's being created in this little database with ones and zeros was stored. So because of large language models and large image data and large mountains and mountains of data, we are seeing a significant focus on being able to use all that data for machine learning and pattern matching and great use cases like immunotherapy and financial services targeting individuals with the best products that a company can offer. And in education, we're seeing advanced personalized education, and so on. And so there's a significant amount of really great things that are happening as a result of this Web 2. What's interesting about this, and probably not a statistic you are unfamiliar with, is that 90% of all the data that's in this Web 2 database was created in the last 2 years. So that's really amazing. It's really amazing. And that's one of the reasons why artificial intelligence is possible, because now we have all this data out there. And when we think about moving to Web 3, this idea of a Web 3 infrastructure or distributed web infrastructure is starting to mature. And it's maturing based on three major technologies that are separate technologies, but that are maturing at individual rates, right? So the maturity of the distributed web is dependent on a mature distributed ledger for security, a mature mechanism for digital ownership of assets, and mature digital compensation. And so the idea of being able to use blockchain as part of the distributed ledger, and in many ways, we're talking about the move from public blockchains to private blockchains. The idea of being able to create ownership in a digital world, so non-fungible tokens that represent the ability for a consumer to demonstrate that they have full ownership of a digital asset. And then cryptocurrencies, these digital currencies that allow people, creators, to get paid for the digital assets they create in the infrastructure, and particularly in the metaverse. And so as these three technologies continue to evolve, what we're seeing is a more focused and more intentional investment in the infrastructure, as well as the applications that sit on top of this infrastructure, the metaverse. And so as these ideas grow together, the Web 2 approaches to consumption are starting to give way to a distributed autonomous organization, or DAO, which is focused on these three technologies where creators are taking hold. And so what are some of the important investment areas, and who's making some of these investments? So there's no shortage of companies, and I've just listed just a few companies: metaverse, fungible token developers, cryptocurrency companies. All of these elements are growing at a radical pace and strengthening the foundation of this idea of the distributed web. And these companies that I've listed here just represent a small fraction of the companies that are making significant investments in the distributed web. Now, one of the key aspects that we want to emphasize is that this idea of the distributed web, and of course, all of the applications that ride on top of them, really changes privacy, transparency, and ethical considerations by introducing a cluster that allows users to interact and create and exercise ownership over their own digital content. And in a very real sense, this distributed web infrastructure removes the intermediaries and provides the foundation for decentralizing, or what we have always thought about as democratizing the internet. So we have been talking about this ability to democratize capabilities associated with the internet, but with Web3 infrastructure and the applications of the metaverse which sit on top of them, we're getting much, much closer to this democratization of capabilities that are very, very much moving away from um, central authorities for privacy, security, ethical, and transparent responsibilities, as well as all of the authentication, authorization, and um, security mechanisms that are maybe perhaps held in a central authority. Now, all of that is distributed as well. And so, again, we're moving from this consumer model where I guess go into Web 2 and environment, or even a Web 2 environment that's got a veneer of a persistent digital environment sitting on top of it. It's still Web 2 underlying, to an environment where we're in a full Web3 environment where we have a digital security model, a digital asset model, and a digital compensation model, fully functional in a way that allows for creators to drive the growth of web and then of data. And there's some really cool implications associated with it, right? So one of them we could talk about is this idea of data storage moving from server to the network. And so we have the ability now to distribute this idea of storage. The semantic web allows for permissionless, no central authority capabilities and frictionless ability to share and develop interoperability between creators. It provides for an extension of the zero trust model to provide for secure network and secure ownership. And this is a key feature in ensuring the security of both the assets and the infrastructure and the application environment. The ability to develop a consensus-based immutable record-keeping mechanism for security is a critical factor, and it allows for a way of ensuring that we have, especially in a private distributed ledger, a mechanism for security that is not based on a central authority. And then, of course, AI provides a significant impact on automated data management, data governance, and intelligent search. And so our ability to find and get access to the capabilities in the distributed web, as well as the applications that sit on top of them, are also AI enabled. And again, we talked about giving way to creators and a focus on data sovereignty. And I just put this quote down here around surveillance capitalism. This is the unilateral claiming of private human experience and experiences as free raw material for translation into behavioral data. And in many ways, Web 2 and even this new application that was released roughly 100 days ago in the conversational AI space, ChatGPT, is part of this ability to capture the private human experience through ingestion of all of this data as raw material, and provides a regurgitation of that into behavioral data or a response that appears to look like behavioral data. And so in a real sense, this idea of a distributed web will find its way into these environments and have a fundamental shift in those environments, especially for the people who are creating solutions and being able to use digital security, digital asset, and digital compensation to claim their human experience and ensure that it is not free raw material anymore. So where are we seeing the metaverse and what is it? So the metaverse is in fact a fully realized digital space. And the easiest way for me to describe it is the application space, the application activity, the uh, persistent digital environment that sits on top of the Web3 infrastructure. And this is a collective created by the convergence of this virtually enhanced physical and digital reality. This convergence provides a persistent, enhanced, immersive experience. And it requires multiple technologies and trends in order to function. So we would not only see AI providing a mechanism for the rise of the decentralized web and the metaverse, but also AR and VR, head-mounted displays, cloud, IoT, 5G, and other spatial technologies, spatial and sensor technologies. And so in a very real sense, we are looking at the convergence of multiple technologies, enabling technologies that are in need of maybe some guardrails and maybe some policies that allow us to provide a fully digital, persistent environment um, so that people can now become creators in this fully distributed web environment. And Gartner suggests that within the next few years, a quarter of people will be spending at least an hour a day in the metaverse for working, shopping, education, social media, or entertainment. And there's maybe some good reason to consider that it'll happen before 2026, because we have already seen some really great use cases in the metaverse. We can see some ideas associated with concerts and entertainment events, gaming, digital assistants, the ability to do natural language processing and natural language generation and dialogue management. All of these assets are made possible because of this idea of a persistent digital environment. And so even though these technologies that make the metaverse possible are in a very early stage or nascent, business leaders are already starting to evaluate how much of an investment they need to make into Web3 and metaverse capabilities as Web2 capabilities are giving way to Web3. So let's take a look at just a few of the use cases to see if there's one that might be of interest to you. One of the ones that my kids like is Nike Land and Roblox. This is an important one, not necessarily because of its level of sophistication, although it is sophisticated, but because it introduces young minds and young consumers, creators, to this idea of a distributed security environment where they can, in a persistent way, create capabilities, have them assign digital ownership to them, and find ways to create compensation models that benefit them because of the creation of these assets in Nike Land. Another one that is, I think, pretty interesting is Hyundai's new onboarding capability. New employees are able to onboard Hyundai inside the metaverse, and they're able to use their avatars to negotiate company policies and processes and understand how to quickly and rapidly onboard into the new company. KPMG is pretty far into the use of the metaverse for their basic business operations. So senior level staff meetings, the ability to go onto a persistent digital environment, to have people have interactive conversations, be able to share ideas on whiteboards and do presentations in a persistent environment, capture all that material and then feed that back into the real world for processing and understanding is a really cool use case. one that is also pretty interesting is the Dolce Gabbana digital fashion metaverse. And now the reason I like this one is because what it does is highlights the convergence of the physical and the digital environments. So a person that goes into a metaverse Dolce Gabbana digital fashion store and creates a purse or shoes or a dress can sell it in that store in the virtual digital world. But once it reaches a certain level of sales, uh, Dolce Gabbana and the creator are able to work out a compensation model where Dolce Gabbana will actually make the item in real life and then put it in a physical store. And we're seeing many, many, many different examples of that, where you can create your own house in the metaverse with a realtor. And if the realtor is gets so many people looking at that house and so much attention to that house, they will actually build the house in real world. Same thing with many other retail products. And so it illustrates how significant the development of a persistent digital environment can be, not only in the digital world, but in the physical world as well. And so, we have many other examples: gaming, um, recruitment and retention, training, financial services, tourism. I mentioned sports and entertainment, and then virtual influencing or marketing, right? And these use cases illustrate the impact that organizations and creators are having on the assets that they create and the compensation models that they are innovating on in order to make the physical and the digital worlds operate together. So when we think about Web3 and the metaverse, Web3 is the next generation of the internet, which is a decentralized system which allows creators, we could strike users, creators, to control their data and engage in peer-to-peer interactions. One of the infrastructure areas that I most like is the notorious BIG Web3 implementation and metaverse. This is a place where you can go and you can buy digital posters. You can actually buy physical music that's not available online. You can create um, posters, joint sessions, film stories, and put it in the um, metaverse virtual world where other people can interact with it and share information in real time as well. It is one of the most sophisticated Web3 metaverse implementations that I've seen. And one of the things that's interesting about it is that the creators, the family of this now deceased musician, are really keeping all of the elements associated with that musician's world alive. And that's something that's quite amazing. The ability to apply open standards and protocols that allow creators to interact on this basis is important. And that's something that we're really looking for, given the fact that I'm not going to be relying on third parties to actually create those. The difference is that the metaverse focuses on building a community of people with similar interests, right? So I can create, as an example, a persistent digital environment of just data scientists like me. And I would make myself look a lot more handsome than I am. But what I would do is I would provide a mechanism for us to share all the data perhaps that I've put into all the articles that I've published in Google Scholar. I might find them in my persistent digital environment as a digital asset. This presentation might be one of those digital assets that is got a non-fungible token and a distributed ledger blockchain associated with it. And I might be able to interact with other data scientists wherever they are in the world and provide access to this shared information. and make it even commercially available, right? In a way that I could get compensation through some sort of private current digital currency. The point is that AI and Web3 and the metaverse are here and real. And I think the point that I want to make sure that we get is that now is the time for AI practitioners to begin experimenting with these technologies, and of course, helping to mature the three foundational technologies of the distributed web, blockchain, non-fungible tokens, and cryptocurrencies in a way that makes them easy to consume and available for metaverse implementations. So that's the end of my presentation. Let me see if we have any questions in the chat. Are you able to flip? Well, let me go back to the top here. Are you able to flip the view so that the slide deck is bigger? Well, maybe I wish I would have seen that before I got to the end. And then there's a offer to connect. So I don't have any questions about my presentation in the chat. If you do have any questions, now is the time to put them in the chat. I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm excited that we got a chance to share this time together, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Data Science Innovators Conference.